afternoon, everyone. Welcome to everybody. Real quick, let's just start with Mr. Miller, go around the table and introduce ourselves.
Hello, I'm Brad Miller, CEO of PSTA.
Cassandra Borchers with PSTA.
Jim Kennedy, City Council, City of St. Petersburg.
Karen Seal, editor of T-Barter. I don't remember who I represent.
Jeff Danner, T-Barter.
Harriet Crozier, I think I'm MPO. No,
Okay.
MPO.
Ken Welch, PSTA, according to my card.
Julie Vidalski, representing MPO.
Susan Ladala, PSTA.
Sarah Ward, MPO staff.
Great.
Well, I have a correction. Apparently, I'm from the PPC this afternoon.
That's okay. Having everyone introduce themselves, let's see, we did not meet last month, correct? So I hope everybody had a good New Year's. We're ready to go. And I would like an approval if there's no changes to the minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion on the table to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Great, let's just jump right into the agenda. There will be 2 items, just to let my team members know, that I will be asking for a motion to accept that they're going to present to us. And with that, Mr. Miller, you get to start off.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon. So, yes, as the chair just noted, on your agenda, the two main items for this meeting of the ACPT. One is my discussion that I'm about to present to you about the ACPT and sort of the logistics of what we are embarking on. And then second, you're going to hear from the consultants that PSTA has hired, transportation management and design, on the bus planning effort that PSTA is well underway. There's many members of the ACPT that are on PSTA that have heard some of what the folks from TMD have already said, but as you will recall, the new objective for this advisory committee is to not be a project committee or a project advisory committee, but is to be about all of the transportation planning that we want to put together into ultimately a package and to present to PSTA and then on to the county. So that leads into my presentation. No, this is not working.
Is it on? So I'll just go quickly through just the ACPT role and what the action item that you hopefully will take today to approve of your role. The context of it is that a week and a half ago, the PSTA board of 15 members voted 15-0 unanimously to ask the county commission to place the referendum on the November 2014 ballot. It was a very significant vote. It wasn't the only vote. It was the first step, but it was a significant step to move forward, to ask the county to set the date of November of 2014. That sort of sets our timeline for this committee forward. That vote will obviously be leading to a county action, hopefully, if we can get our calendars worked out, later this month, and then we'll be off and running. Just a reminder: this ACPT is not the first committee that has talked about this. This has been a community discussion for the last 30 years in Pinellas County, and this little picture is a 1997 version that looks eerily like the current one, but that we have. So, what does this vote there have? What does that mean for the ACPT
it was a very important vote, and there was 150 people in the room, and most of them were very supportive of the action the PSTA board members unanimously took. Now the devil and what this committee is about is more of the details. So what I'm going to sort of present to you, and this is what is very important to present to the county commission in a few weeks, is the logistics on how we get from where we are now to November of 2014. Okay. The action that I'm recommending for the ACPT to take is to agree to be the coordinating board. As you just looked at your name tags, you are the only board that brings all of the different transportation planning groups together into one board. But for you to agree to take on that role as the coordinating board to receive and be the first officially, maybe not always first on the calendar, but first sort of official recommending body to approve all elements, not just the alternative analysis, but all elements that ultimately will make it into the package plan, and then onto the county, onto the PSTA, and then to the county for approval, and to be the ballot initiative in November of 2014. Now, the body that you are recommending things to is PSTA, officially. But as I'm going to show you, since you all represent a lot more than just PSTA, you really are recommending this to a whole bunch of different people. Again, and I think it's very important to try to simplify this because it is so complex. Unfortunately, Pinellas Planning Council Commissioner, I guess you call them commissioners, Doreen Hockey-Polita, also from Clearwater. She called me before and said she couldn't be here today, but she was rattling off all the acronyms, and I said, wow, I am impressed. You are becoming a real transportation person, knowing TBARTA and ACPT and all these different things. It's complicated, and my slides are going to get more complicated, so it's important to show this simple slide. This is the logistical way that decisions will be made, at least from the board level. The ACPT, which is again representing of all the different entities, to PSTA onto the county. And what we have an action item, the second action item here, hopefully will take today after you hear from the Transportation Management Design, is to approve the goals for the bus plan. Now, those are goals that have already been presented to PSTA at present, and PSTA will also have to approve, of course. But it's important, sort of symbolically, that you approve them and send them up the ladder. You requested, and I so dutifully complied, with showing how other entities fit into this mix. TBARTA is the regional planning entity. They are developing, they are state required to develop a regional master transportation plan. They do that. They appoint 2 members to this committee. They are very important. Obviously, our plans need to clearly need to work within a regional context. Technically, they do not. There's no federal requirement that I'm aware of that they have to approve every little detail that we approve. But their master plan, our plans need to be consistent and be fed into their master higher level plans. The MPO is similar, but it does have the additional responsibility that it is a federal government requirement that their long-range plan does include our plans. It's a little bit different. So I put all the arrows I could on there. The ACPT and PSTA will be communicating or presenting their recommendations and plans to TBARTA and the MPO.
I imagine there will be presentations on the elements, and then as I'm going to show you in a second, one thing that came out of a discussion that the PSTA board had last month was a specific approval or request that the ACPT members, that you as members, since you do sit on these other transportation bodies, and you sit on your own elected body, either from St. Petersburg or Pinellas County or whatever, that you agree as members of the ACPT that you will personally come back and make reports and update your either transportation body and your hometown or whatever on what's going on here. That we haven't done that in the past. I know most of you do that, but that the PSTA board actually voted as their recommendation to the ACPT that asked you to agree to take on that role, the sort of individual communicators, just to make sure that we do present this to everybody, and we get that buy-in. It's important to note that certainly when I've got the PSTA logo on there, but PSTA actually has its own committees and structure. And so when I say PSTA, it'll go through the committees of PSTA and then on to PSTA. It's not just the PSTA board, and I don't know that the county has the same sort of committee structure, but they have other groups. It's one big logo. I know the MPO has different committees. It will certainly go through them, etc. I put that little arrow on it just because the MPO does have that specific requirement per the feds to include whatever we end up approving as a package into their constrained long-range plan. I repeat this slide of photos just to show or emphasize the overlap. This is one of our greatest strengths, is that we do have this substantial overlap. PSTA is a very important body to sort of be the one that the ACPT makes recommendations to, because PSTA is the largest and most broad-based board of primarily elected officials. But as you can see, there is incredible overlap between the county commission and this body. I didn't put the MPO on here, but almost all of you sit on the MPO as well. So again, I know Chair Crozier asked, and we want to have a discussion with you about specific elements that you hope that the ACPT will take up over the next several months and talk about so that they can ultimately be reviewed and put into the plan. Again, today on tap is the bus side, but we'll come back to you with more information about buses than you probably want to know. But that starts today. These are the three things that I think you have to do, or in order for this to be successful, that are sort of requirements. Other things are maybe more optional. We have to agree on reviewing and approving the plan elements. That be the bus plan, the land use plan, the messaging plan. I think we should have discussions at this body first and then on about implementation methods, whether exactly how the bus service improvements that we're talking about get implemented, how the rail improvements that we talked about get improved, whether we look at things like public-private partnerships or look at contracting out some of the bus service or deals with certain entities in Pinellas County on different things. You know, how those elements get worked out. And then third is that this body would be the first, not the last, but the first group to discuss and then ultimately make recommendations on the specific ballot language. That, as you may know, in Hillsborough County in 2010, that was a challenging discussion that they had, and they had it mostly at the Hillsborough County level. We're proposing something different here in Pinellas, that the county commission would delegate the responsibility to develop the ballot language to this process, ACPT and PSTA, in working with TBARTA and the MPO. Delegate it to those entities to bring back to the county at a later date. The county would then have to approve it at that time. So all of these elements, again, you are a recommending body, but an important body, and these are the three sort of most important elements. Again, I mentioned this. Additionally, it's recommended that you accept or approve of your role in addition to sort of the official communication, but that you agree to update your bodies, your transportation bodies, and your sort of elected bodies regularly. And those reports are not defined, but can be in whatever format you want them to be. Are there any questions or discussion?
Well, I'll open the floor to anybody. Somebody wants to speak out? Yes.
From the point of the technicalities and stuff on the referendum question, do we have a, excuse me, do we have an attorney that sits with us as this board from the county or from PSTA or from someone to give us advice or answer legal questions along those lines?
I think the formal questions, I don't think we've assigned either the PSTA legal counsel or the county counsel or TBARTA counsel to this body, but yes, I know that the county has recently sort of asked for that legal advice, and the PSTA board already has a white paper developed by its counsel on those particulars that we'll share with this body, certainly. But if you think that we should officially assign a particular counsel to the ACPT, we can look at that.
Well, just the thought of we've got to be within parameters, we're going to be the first step, it may not be a bad idea.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just suggest that you talk to Jim Bennett at the county. I mean, why would we hire somebody else? It's the county's responsibility to do it. So if we're going to delegate it, trust me, they're going to want to be involved. So we may as well just eliminate that little hiccup. I've had that conversation with Jim Bennett involved in Sala, and they just need to be brought into the loop. Because Bob's first question, I met with him the day that the article was in the newspaper that we passed it, and his first question to me was, well, we got to get busy writing this ballot language. And I went, no, not yet.
Yeah.
But they're out of the loop, and you need to get them in.
Yeah,
We
it's a valid question. We don't want to come up with something in a vacuum and then present it to them and it get kicked back because of some kind of technical thing, obviously. So yes, that.
But if they've invented the wheel already, that makes sense.
Commissioner Seals, you have what I was, Commissioner Ross, you need to.
Yeah, and Jim Bennett has developed an outline of the timeline that it would take, and we were going to have this discussion at our last meeting, but about 10 o'clock at night, after 8 hours of meeting, we had to raise there that day, and I don't know, about 50 veterans showed up, and anyway, by the time we got to 10 o'clock at night, we didn't have a chance to go over it. So on February 12th, we will talk about it at our meeting and talk about the logistics, and the first step is securing the November 2014 date, and then the referendum language piece of it, we'll talk about that a little bit. But if this body agrees, I think it would be good to have a request from the ACPT to the county, requesting that we handle the ballot language in that manner, from ACPT to PSTA, with a recommendation to the county to adopt that language. So that'll be the 12th, and then we'll vote on it the 26th in terms of setting the date.
Mr. Bannon, anything? Anyone else? Well, oh, yes.
And let me just make one point to that. Well, I failed to mention that at the January 23rd PSTA meeting, the PSTA voted to ask the ACPT to take this role. So the PSTA has already approved
So
this
they've
plan.
approved us doing it. So if we were to make a motion that
We accept it.
we accept that, but that the referendum language and the time frame will be set by the county attorney and their staff, I think that's all we need to do. And then at some point, I'm sure they'll go, okay, we've got this much, now we're going to present it to us, fresh eyes to look at. Go, yeah, you know all of it, let's keep it moving. But am I correct? That's all that I want, that we want. One of the things we want to today is to give a motion to the county that we would like for them to prepare the referendum language and whatever all they have. Their legal team.
I think that would be different than the process that I've laid out here.
Okay.
Again, I think the action for the ACPT is to accept this responsibility, maybe subject to coordinating with the county attorney on the parameters and schedule for the referendum. Maybe that, because it will be the ACPT and PSTA's role. The county has to approve of that, but it will be ACPT and PSTA's role to develop the ballot language and the plans.
Right.
And then make those recommendations as bodies back to the county.
Okay.
It's important, subject
Don't we
to.
need to say to the county so that they can tell their people officially that we do support them working this step? I mean, where am I missing? I'll just be quiet and listen to some of you, maybe can help me.
Well,
Commissioner
I
Gray
think,
a little bit, too.
I think what we're asking, and where the question came from, Jim, is that probably when it comes time to develop the ballot language, that the county attorney be present during our discussions and tell us what, you know, or that once we come up with language, you work with him to figure out if there's anything we've said that or done that is not legal. It's us it's we that are coming out with language, and their attorney.
Okay. I don't think it's us doing the language. I think
Well,
it needs to
it's-
be an attorney doing the language, giving it to us to massage. Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually much bigger than that.
Okay.
The statute for this tax says that the up to 1 penny can be used for, and there are several things listed.
Okay.
It is the county's responsibility to determine what that's going to be used for.
Okay.
We're kind of going in another direction, which the county can be all right with, but we can use it for road maintenance, we can use it for public transportation, it can be used, Karen, you probably know this better than I do. You can build new roads with it. Lots of things fall into that category. So,
And there's no, what was a misconception along the way was that a certain percentage had to be spent in a certain manner, and that's not true.
not sure.
Okay.
So,
So,
we have to,
We, the county.
no,
You, the
we,
This
this group,
Okay.
if I understand what has just been presented to us, we will come up with, and I don't want to say anything because we've never had these discussions, but this amount of it will be used for this.
Mhm.
This
Right.
amount will be used for expansion of rapid transit. This will be used for expansion of regular bus transit, you know, blah, 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 whatever those things are that we come up with. Whatever they may be. And it has to be, you know, Jim Bennett can massage all that, but we've not had that discussion. We've talked, unless I've missed something, we've always talked like this was purely PSTA's decision. The money would purely be spent and determined by the PSTA board. And I think we just have to get, everybody get their arms around how that's going to be determined and how it moves forward. Does that make sense?
Kind
I was
of.
going to echo the same thing, that I think it was asking this group to take on that responsibility. And further to your comment, I assume then we would engage the attorney as we have those discussions at some point early in the process. At first, just making sure the committee is aware of the parameters for use of the dollars. And I think as Commissioner Welch mentioned, maybe reviewing the schedule and all of that, but assuming that this group accepts what Brad and the rest of the executive team is putting forward, you would do it in this committee, I think as you're saying, but certainly with direction and support from the county attorney is the way I perceive it.
Well, and the county ultimately has to approve it. I mean, this is advisory, just, following that route on the map. And I think this is the board to do it, but that's given inputs from all the stakeholders, chambers, neighborhoods, whatever. But I think this board is the right conduit to make that recommendation. I don't see another body that represents all the stakeholders that can do this. So I think this is what we agreed to do a couple months ago, to take on the new role. So it makes sense to me that this would be the body to do it.
So, it was all, Shannon, what did you say?
No, I just, I think it'd be good at the front end to have an understanding of what the tax allows. Do that first and then get into the discussion on the plan elements and those kind of things to develop it.
So do we, Commissioner?
And, Sarah and I have had this discussion. The MPO plan helps to prioritize all of the projects and has different priority lists already. So we need to make sure that we're cognizant of those and then, have a big white sheets and have projects listed and have projects prioritized by the cities that maybe go to the MPO, and then we should have a community stakeholders meeting so that we get truly a grassroots bottom up, understanding of what people want. And then, ultimately, I just, it does come to the county commission for approval, disapproval, and there could be some changes, we don't know. So, just so everybody's aware of that. But if it's a well fleshed out plan, I'm sure it'll be accepted.
So originally, yes, and we'll make sure of that. Back to what your concern was, as was mine at the beginning, when you mentioned there's the three main areas in the referendum language. If I'm not mistaken, you were wondering, well, we don't have a legal body sitting here, who is that? When we know it really needs to be the county. And even though they'll do their thing when it's time, it will come to us and then move on through the ranks. So that, I think, should answer your question. What you're looking for at this point is, go to your next slide. Please, thank you, that one.
This one?
No, we know who we are. We're beautiful people. This slide is the one that you're looking for an approval by this board that we accept those areas, and knowing underneath those areas there's a lot more logistics that go along with them, and we are accepting whatever role we have to play in making all of them happen to build the box. Am I correct?
Correct.
So that's what we're doing. Commissioner?
David Sadowski from the county attorney's office is in the audience. I don't know if he wants to say anything or not. We're kind of putting him on the spot here.
Sure, I was listening to the whole conversation, see where I was going, but I mean, the decision on the referendum language is a county decision, and the county would make it. The way the diagram was drawn is that the ACPT goes to the PSTA. So you're more like a committee to the PSTA based on that diagram. And But in the end, it's a county decision, so you need, I don't know if the county is ready to delegate its obligation to draft the language down to you. You can always recommend it to the PSTA and they can recommend it up. But, it's not a, you're asking to accept a delegation that hasn't been offered to you, first of all. And so I think this is, right, I know, but this is something that needs to be worked with the county before you accept something that hasn't been worked out. But in the end, it's going to be the county's responsible for drafting the language. So you're just going to be a recommending board. And again, the way that the diagram was set out, you're a committee of the PSTA, not the county.
Correct. Commissioner Seals?
And, perhaps the diagram needs to be switched because, PSTA is one entity that will be bringing and then the ACPT brings TBARTA, MPO, and PSTA suggestions. And then maybe we massage it by doing city and community stakeholder meetings and take that role on as the oversight and the advisory of whatever the list is back up to the county commission, so that we make sure that all entities are heard and their plans prioritized. That would be my suggestion.
And that's, I'm sure, what we talked about. Can you go back to the diagram?
Yeah.
Okay, he shows the ACPT going to,
The others, but then taking it back to PSTA to the county. And I think that needs to be switched.
county and all?
No. PSTA on the bottom along with TBARTA and PO, and then the ACPT in the middle up to Pinellas County.
See, the county hasn't adopted ACPT as an official
I
advisory.
guess we'll have to.
Yeah.
PSTA did.
Right.
And I think
Yeah,
that's
we'll
why.
have- We'll have to do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could do that.
I think it's appropriate to have all the bodies represented here to be the recommending advisory board.
Brad?
But
Oh, you were going to,
Either way. PSTA, from the last time we talked about this, the recommendation, we are the transportation, we will be the people most likely implementing a lot of this. So, we wanted, what was voted on was that we would be the one as PSTA. That's what was voted on. Now, if you all want to change that, it's going to have to go back to the PSTA board. Because we are the transportation people, and some of the stakeholder things that you're speaking of, I would assume we would be doing that anyway. But what the PSTA board voted on is the way you see it. If it switches, it's going to have to go back to the board.
Brad?
Yeah, as Commissioner Bojowski has said, it is my recommendation to flow from ACPT to PSTA to the county. And as Mr. Staffy said, clearly it is known by all. This is a county decision. To put it on the ballot is a county decision, and the ballot language is a county decision. That's what the law requires. And no one is trying to no one is asking the county to delegate those responsibilities legally to anybody else. But the recommendation is that we set up a all-encompassing collaborative process, but not overly complicated. A simple process that essentially, so that all of these groups act as the county's subcommittee, or it's still the county is in charge, but that it is a very deliberative process that the county feels comfortable with, that the transportation experts are the ones doing the planning. Clearly, the legal experts need to provide the legal advice,
no doubt. But PSTA is, as the next slide shows, the most comprehensive group. It is a legal body. It is the bus company that is known. The other entities are very awesome organizations, but they're not as known out in the community as the blue PSTA buses. And so it's important it clearly, I think, is important to present out into the public that the PSTA board is supportive of this. You know, and I think it's important to the county commission, I don't know, that the PSTA board is accepting of this. It's also important, clearly, that the MPO is on board, the TBARTA, and the PPC is on, and the community, obviously, and the stakeholders. Sure, but at least it would be my recommendation that that while it could start at PSTA and then be approved by this ACPT, and then on to ultimately to the county, that we would keep it like this, that we get the buy-in first, and then bring it forward.
Okay.
Well, I agree. I think you're going to end up with a circle.
Circle.
And I agree with Commissioner Seal that the MPO needs to tell us what the road plans are, PSTA needs to tell us what the bus alternative analysis, BRT routes are, TBARTA, their priorities, and master plan. They all fit in the ACPT's all-encompassing, countywide, all-mode transportation plan, and the public input. And then they would then take it back again to get support from the MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, and take it to the county. So I don't know if that's too complicated, but I think it's circular. I think it's right. You have to get the input from those boards that are required to develop their plans, put them in the more comprehensive plan, and then once that's sort of approved or decided on and branded and all those other things we're doing, then take that to the MPO, PSTA, TBARTA for their support of the completed plan, which would then go to the county commission with everyone's approval, hopefully.
You know, you could technically make the argument that truly where transportation planning in Pinellas County is currently done is at the MPO level. Because that's where all the long-range plans are forced through or put through. But since we're trying to make this a cooperative across the board's decision and input, gather as much input as possible, that's why I was suggesting the ACPT, because then you fairly included everybody at the table.
But aren't we including everybody at the table and then taking it to the group that's requesting the funding and explaining everything that's going to go to the county?
I don't want to we're going to waste too much time
Right.
getting into the weeds on this. I just really believe, it's ultimately the county that's going to decide the percentage shares and everything else like that. So I think the circle is a much better idea, so we don't get in the weeds.
Brad, I'm sorry.
What's the thought process on public input? I mean, I know that PSTA has public input, the Pinellas County Board of Commissioners has. Are we going to try to do that, or are we going to try to do it from?
Sarah, do you want to talk to that, or Brad?
Well, as we develop the overall plans, we expect to use a wide range of public input opportunities as a part of the long-range plan development. And so we've already started with our focus groups and some other activities, and although the discussion hasn't been specific to this one funding source, we are asking for input on projects and on how we fund various initiatives going forward. So I would assume there would be a number of ways that we would gain input from the public. Now, I had some discussion with Chair Crozier with regard to, and that was with the assumption at that time that the ACPT would be taking the lead on this, was adding perhaps a citizen representative or a business representative to this group So that was going to be, I think, brought forward for discussion today, but sounds like we may be going in a
I'm
different
gonna push
direction,
that off to a
but
little later.
certainly we recognize that there needs to be a lot of community engagement, and that will be done in a number of different ways as we develop the MPO's plan, the community bus study. That would happen in a number of ways.
But I guess the question is that going to happen at the MPO PST level, or is that going to happen at our level of what we're?
Well, that's been a collaborative effort in terms of as we're doing our community outreach. We have been working with PSTA and other partners as a part of the long-range plan, and as Commissioner Seals correctly indicated, that all of this will need to be in the long-range plan if we envision using federal funds. So anything for which we would need federal funds would need to be in the long-range plan. So as the MPO is updating its plan, we're doing it in a collaborative manner with the other public agencies, local governments, FDOT, PSTA. It's not the MPO in isolation. Does that answer your question? And it's not specific to the referendum. It's just as a part of our long-range plan update, which is due in 2014. We have developed a very extensive public engagement plan that's being implemented in collaboration with our partners.
Each thing that comes before this advisory board will be put together by some staff, and it will pull in, either we'll then have to take it out to the public, or they will have already taken it to the public. So all of that is going to be happening through this whole process. Am I correct, at different phases?
That is right. Trying to further answer the question, we had not planned on hiring a consultant or, developing a standalone ACPT public engagement process. We had not. We had planned on utilizing the already robust MPO public engagement process on the overall plan, PSTA's public engagement process on its specific projects and things, and then it would be your job as the ACPT members to make sure that the public and other groups had been engaged before you approved of the plan. If you don't think we have touched a group, then this is your opportunity to say, go back out. And
So you feel as if most of the public input is going to come through MPO, PSTA. It's not necessarily going to be this body's job to go out and get that public input. That's going to come from the other entities that already have that established.
I would say yes to that. And as we earlier talked about, though, all of you as board members represent your local community. So certainly I would hope that as you engage your citizens or your policy board in your community, you would keep them updated on these matters. And with this body, we do allow public input as a part of this process. But as Brad indicated, we were not looking to set up a separate effort with consultants. And with the MPO's plan this time around, I think we are allocating more resources to the public outreach than we have the last several plan updates. And one of the things that we found most beneficial as a part of our outreach, and we discovered that through the T-Barter Master Plan and the alternatives analysis, is the e-town halls. Allows us to reach a lot more people, and so we have budgeted for e-town halls as a part of the long-range plan update.
We being the MPO.
The MPO. We being the MPO, yes. Yes, so we are actually allocating quite a bit of resources, our resources and PSTA contributing to that, but trying to do it all within the confines of the MPO's plan and some of the other related plans underway, like the community bus study that PSTA is doing separately.
I just wanted an expectation as to where that came
Yeah.
from.
Commissioner Welsh and then, okay, Commissioner.
I was just gonna say, I think the way you both described it is the initial plan. But my guess is as things break out, as we get through this process, that, I think we're gonna want to have some of our own dialogue with the citizens. I just have a feeling that's coming. Commissioner Seal has an enormous wealth of information at her fingertips from the last group she said. You know, I think there'll be more than what we're saying. I think what you both have established is a base.
Yeah.
We have this. We can always do more. And I have a feeling we'll want to do more. And I don't think there's anything that will stop us from wanting to do more, but at least we know we have a base. That's the way I see it. And as things develop, we'll see what our needs are.
Commissioner Watts.
And that's exactly where I was at. There's been so much community outreach from Transportation Task Force, the AA, Community Bus Plan, MPO. We've heard from the community what they need. I think the next step is putting together that base plan that you can show the community. Here's what we're thinking about for the referendum. What do you think about it? I think we've got plenty of community input
Do it again.
for 10 years. But let's get that base plan together and go
Give
from
them
there.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Commissioner Davis.
I'll make a couple motions, see if we can get there. First, for the ACPT to accept the recommended responsibilities for the plan elements, implementation methods, and to work with the county legal staff on recommended referendum language.
Do I have a
Second.
I have a second.
And the understanding is we will ask the commission to delegate the responsibility for the ballot language development in coordination with the county attorney.
I assume. Yeah.
It's still a recommendation,
Right.
no matter what, so yeah.
Well, I'm going to Mr. Sadowski's point that the commission needs to make the ask.
I have a motion and a second. All those that support the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay?
And then I'll also make a motion that we ask the county commission to recognize the ACPT as the entity that will develop the plan with the input from MPO, PSTA, and TBARTA, and then also then go to MPO, PSTA, and TBARTA for adoption of that plan to take it to the county commission.
That just, since PPC puts the people on here, include them in your initials.
Yes.
Okay, so we have that. Does everybody understand what that motion is? And
It's making
not-
that previous diagram a circle instead of the.
Correct.
And asking the county to.
And
to
everybody,
acknowledge.
again, to do their,
Everything will point to
everything goes to
Is the diagram changing?
Yes.
The arrows are changing.
The arrows are changing.
Okay.
You have the county
I
in the
see it
middle.
as MPO, TBARTA,
Yes.
PSTA, PPC, advising the ACPT on what the plan is. Once the plan is developed, ACPT would then go to MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, PPC for
Their
approval and recommendation to then go to the county commission.
You're saying ACPT goes directly to the county?
After they've gone to all the
Oh, yeah.
other places have said yes, that they want.
Yeah, I can't.
Where does that, how does,
It would go, the input would come from MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, and I was planning council, to ACPT to develop the plan.
okay. we
The
developed
finished plan would then go to MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, and PPC for their approval for ACP to take it to the county commission.
As I said, you're gonna have to go back to PSTA board.
It will. It'll go to PSTA board, MPO board, TBARTA board,
No,
and PPC.
I'm saying your motion right here cannot go to the county, it has to go back to the PSTA board. Because the PSTA board requested that this board be created, and it approved that format. Okay, and I'm saying to you that before you can go make that recommendation to the county, you've gotta come back to the PSTA board. Because what we requested, and I know I'm an MPO representative here, but I just sit on PSTA. We requested that this board be created. And the PSTA board just approved what you see there. So if you are going to recommend a difference in what you see there, you then need to make your case back to the PSTA board. That's what I'm saying.
Comment, Madam Chair.
yes.
And we're all wearing multiple hats here today. I think this board wasn't created by the the PSTA, it was the continuation of the PAC. As I recall, the PSTA authorized ACPT as an advisory board to the PSTA. And my interpretation of what Jeff said is that still that relationship maintains itself, but now it also will be advisory to the MPO and T-BARTA in terms of developing the plan. So it doesn't, in my view, change what PSTA voted for.
I think it does, because it's going to be, at this point, what that shows is that it's PSTA in the end going to the county, not the ACPT. And this is not a power struggle. I don't want anybody to think that. That's not.
No.
It's not what it's about. But that is the way it was developed. Am I saying that correct, Brad?
I think it would be consistent with the action that the PSTA board just took on the 15-0 vote to ask the county. The PSTA board took that action to ask the county to set November of 2014 as the date.
It's PSTA asking. So, I mean, it's PSTA, and I understand that the MPO makes the transportation, I mean, I understand all of that, but there has to be one guiding force. And what you're doing is PSTA is asking to be that guiding force. That's what they approved. And what you're saying is that you're asking that the ACPT be the guiding force. And so if you're going to change that, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. Well, however you want to put it. But if you're saying that it should be different than that, then it has to go back to the PSTA before it goes on any further.
Commissioner Seal.
And don't take me the wrong way, but I could make the argument that the whole plan should be developed by the county commission, because that's who ultimately has to put the referendum language. I'm trying to be inclusive in this effort so that we are including all the players at the table, so that we have a coordinated plan that everyone can buy into and that everyone can agree upon. So I'm actually pulling some, of this away from the county. Yes, they ultimately have to accept it, but I'm hoping that by everybody agreeing what the mix is at the end of the day, that it will be much more acceptable. And so it just seems like with our different hats, this is the best place to make the recommendations. And I could make the argument that it really should be the MPO, because the MPO is the long-range planning organization for the county. But again, I'm trying to reach across and say we're all representatives working together to make this happen. And I also wanted to just make a comment that, well, maybe let's finish this vote, and then I have a suggestion for moving forward. Those two, which I think would be appropriate after the vote.
Okay.
I have a question on the motion.
Well, I was just, if it has to go back to PSTA with a different diagram, I don't have a problem with that. I think it comes with more bang for the buck if the APTC is saying, we've developed the plan and it's been approved by not just PSTA, but the MPO, T-BARTA. I mean, like Karen said, it's got that buy-in from everyone when you go to the county commission as a recommendation for the plan, but it's already been adopted by everybody doing transportation and language planning in the county together. To me, that's the better strategy.
Well,
So again,
if I may, I think that's what we're going to do. I mean, that's exactly what we intended to do.
We being the PSTA.
That's exactly what we intended to do.
So
Commissioner Wolf wants, Commissioner Wolf.
Yeah, and I agree that this was the intent. I think we're getting caught in the weeds here. Everybody has to buy into the plan. The real issue is who's going to take lead and develop it, and that's what we're trying to do. And my question to Jeff was, were you requiring, or did your motion say that MPO, PST, and T-BARTA would approve the coordinated plan that the ACPT develops? And you just said.
Well, we certainly asked
so
them to.
To me, you're just adding, and documenting MPO and T-BARTA approval,
Right.
and adding to that to what PSTA talked about.
Right.
So I think we're almost on the same page on this.
My whole impression was that this plan was going to be developed at our level, and then given to PSTA, who was going to be the direct people going to the county.
Right.
And if we have this, if we put this plan together, then we've got, because we can't go to the county or PSTA without telling them that all these other agencies, we've incorporated all of this stuff, everybody buys in on all of this. I really felt it should have been us from the get-go, but being that PSTA is the one asking for the money, or asking for the referendum, let me say it that way, asking for a referendum, are they asking for a referendum for financing and we're supplementing the plan? Can't the two of us go to the county?
I would recommend against that.
Okay.
No, PSTA is not only asking for financing. PSTA, or the
Once
goal of the
we present a
PSTA board
plan.
as of now, is to approve the plan for the future transportation system.
Correct, that they want to take to the county.
Not just financing. I mean, it is, PSTA will specifically be asked to approve the plan that emerges.
That I don't know, state your motion again. I do understand. Sure, go right ahead.
The idea of a circle or two-ended arrows, back and forth dialogue, maybe not, I don't believe that would by itself require a new PSTA vote. I mean, that, as you said, we all, I think there is unanimity in the idea that everyone needs to get involved. Needs to approve, not just get involved. He needs to approve it, and then it gets sent, totally worked out in a homogeneous way to the county, right? That's the way it needs to work. Maybe this presentation is too specific. It's not, in reality, it's not really going to work exactly like this. It is going to work in a back and forth or circular or whatever way. The idea was that we make it as easy, not for the different bodies to agree, but others that don't come to our meetings to understand. They have a process. It's not it is an inclusive process and a careful one that the county followed. You could defer approval of the diagram until the county provided an opinion on this. It's really up to it's most important that the county agree that they feel comfortable with it. I don't think the diagram is that pivotal. I wouldn't say that alone changes the PSTA vote, but it was the PSTA vote, as Commissioner Johnson said, to be the sort of launching point at the very end of the diving board to the county, as they already did take a vote in that manner.
So if we do the motion again, would you please, do you remember? It was off the top of your head. It was a good one.
Just that the MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, Pinellas Planning Council provide input to the ACPT to develop the overall plan. ACPT would then ask approval of that plan of the MPO, PSTA, TBARTA, and PPC and present it to the Board of County Commission. And I think since we have members of all those boards, if we went and said, MPO voted to approve this, PSTA voted to approve this, TBARTA, PPC have all voted to approve this plan, and then we, with members of all that, are the ones presenting it to PSTA. I think it has that everybody's included and is that best approach.
Okay. Before I ask for a vote, I'm going to ask one
And it
last-
also included having the county commission recognize the ACPT as the board to do that.
Mhm. And you had something in there about that you were legal to correct. Having said that, okay, you executives, the gurus as I call you, you understand, and is that in the flow of the way you see this plan being developed and moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. I believe Commissioner Seals, did you second that?
Just
We
a
passed
question
this.
for clarification. Was that this group reporting back to PSTA or this group reporting back to the county commission?
In the end,
County,
Yeah.
in the
To the county commission.
commission.
Okay, just,
Mhm. All those in favor?
Well, so this is something new. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, it's
Right.
You are, the only
Change.
thing we talked about PSTA that's on our agenda for the 12th is setting a November date. We're adding to that ACPT's role in developing referendum language. And we're also adding to that ACPT will present the final package to the county commission.
That
Which
is
is new.
new. That
That's
is-
new.
That is
So
new.
I just want to make sure we're clear on that. If we're going to do that, then I agree with Julie, that does need to go back to PSTA because that discussion of the final presentation was through PSTA. So if we're going to change that, I do think we need to ratify that with PSTA. The rest of it I'm comfortable with.
And the rest of it
I was
I'm
suggesting
comfortable
was I
with
didn't
too.
think
It's just
that.
that.
If the ACPT board would simply take a motion, the first part of Chair Danner's comment about that the plan would be developed and or the ACPT would receive input from all the other entities, approve the plan to present back for approval to the others, period.
That's good.
No other comments, that would not need to go back to the,
That would
that's
be
what
fine.
PSTA approved.
So why don't we, if the maker of the motion would agree, do that so that on our commission meeting on the 12th, we know what we're going to address, and then if you want to change the presentation for the
then
final
who's presenting
report,
that whole plan to the Board of County Commission?
when we get it all together and
Right.
develop,
Mhm.
the way it stands now is ACPT through the PSTA to the commission. We can change that later if we desire to, but I think we got enough.
I just think it needs to come.
You could change
PSTA
it.
should be presenting the MPO plan. I think the ACPT should be presenting the plan.
Okay,
created
well, that's
by
just
MPO.
different, so maybe we talk about that piece of the next PSTA meeting. The rest of it gives us enough to move
Well,
forward.
if we
with
make the
county
motion I
commission.
made, and then, again, PSTA would have to agree to do that, MPO would have to agree to do that, Tabarda might have to agree to sell. I mean, we're setting the path that, if the motion passes, we agree is the best way to get all the input, all the buy-in to the county commission at the end, and then whatever other actions have to take place by the respective boards would then have to take place between the passage of this motion and at that point where we ask the county commission to adopt the plan. So if it does take an action by MPO, PSTA, all of them, then we'll be setting that plan in effect to do that now.
I agree with Commissioner Welsh. If you're going to stick with the original motion, I do not think that we, as a group here, can go to the county until we go back to PSTA.
PSTA.
Because you're changing a substantial part of what's being
The plan.
said. All of the other part of communication and approval and all of that stuff, A, we assumed we would do, but B, you made it official by that part of your motion. And I think that's perfectly, I think the PSTA board thought that was gonna happen anyway, but you're making it very official, and that's good. But if you're changing the order of things like that, I just think we cannot just supersede that and override that and go on to the county commission without going back to PSTA. I don't think it's fair.
Am I not correct?
It's misrepresentation.
But aren't we, they?
That's not the point. We are not the 15 people that sit on PSTA board that made a
And
vote.
I thought that was the impression that I got, that PSTA was asking us to put the plan, give it to them, they approve it, and take it to the county.
That's right.
That's the
exactly
way
what we
it
were
is.
doing.
And so if we want to change that, I think Commissioner Welsh is correct. First, we need to say, we're going to put the plan together and we're going to gather it. And maybe we make that second motion separate and take it back to PSTA
And
and
make
say,
those
we
arguments.
feel because we represent all the people that are gonna put the plan together, and then let PSTA do that, have it in. Instead of doing one whole motion, we do two, that, yeah, we're gonna do the plan and gather all this data.
And ballot language.
And the ballot language and everything like that, which gives the county, okay, we know what group's gonna pull it all together and pass it off to us, and then go back to PSTA, because I personally also sat in that audience and got the impression from that board of PSTA, they were looking for this committee to give them something that was gonna take it to that next step. And if now that we've had our conversation, we think we should be the final, but they're a piece of that pie, I think we ought to give them that right.
Well, but they're one piece of that pie. And
Correct.
again, that's what I'm trying to do is, this board that has representation of all of those sets the path. And then if PSTA needs to take a position after that, they will. If MPO needs to take a position, they will. TBARDA, PPC.
Everybody.
Because if we do it the other way, then we're asking PSTA then to set the path again, and MPO might not want to. So because we represent all four boards, and when PSTA made that motion, the input from the other boards wasn't there, or the county commission directly, you know, it always is indirectly, but because we represent all four boards, we lay out the path, and then if those boards have to take action to change their position or re-vote to support that position, they can. But I think it's best for this board, set that path, and then all those other boards adopt this new path.
I appreciate everything you're saying, sorry for Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm on this last comment, and then we'll, unless
I
somebody.
just
has
think,
something.
I think out of fairness to the PSTA board, you know, I'm not saying I'm there, I'm against it or for it. I'm just saying that there was a very clear message PSTA was sending as the chairman sat through that meeting. And so I don't believe that this board, in the spirit of cooperation, should supersede that and change it in a meaningful manner without making your arguments, as you've just done, back to the board.
Okay.
I just don't think we should do that. I don't
But-
think that is a fair thing to do.
The PSTA.
The rest of it's all fine.
Action was recommended, and we just have a different recommendation now.
Well,
PSTA
then you
just
should argue
recommended
that
we do
point.
it.
You should argue that different recommendation back to the PSTA
And,
board.
well, we will. If
Well,
this
they will.
motion passes, then we will have something to present to the PSTA board to change that recommendation.
Okay, so, we have a motion on the floor, and you're sticking by it, right? The second, okay, so the motion is on the board that we collect everything, we make the plan, and get all the approval, am I correct? And we pass it on to the county, okay?
And that the county.
And if the county
Recognizes
recognizes-
as an advisory body. And we'll make the ask of the county because we haven't done that.
Correct.
We don't really exist in the county's eyes officially yet.
Yeah,
So that has to be part of the ask.
the ask, along with the legal ramifications to come from. We are asking that they come from the county, as we all know.
And are we also then asking PSTA to reconsider?
Well, they would, if we pass this, then this has to go back to the PSTA saying that the ACPT, this is the steps that they're taking and why they're taking the steps, and then they would make their decision.
I guess the concept is, I just want that to be relayed to the PSTA. We're not trying to take the thing over.
You
know,
have
I mean,
plenty
that's
of
the-
I'll make sure the chair
PSTA.
knows that.
One, two, three, 4, you got four people here, so.
Well,
they have-
the only thing I want to say for the record is that, you know, we are really acting as the descendant body from the PAC today. We're not acting as
Correct.
the advisory committee to PSTA.
Which is a different role than
Right.
what PSTA
So we're-
discussed. And again,
So-
that's all fine, but it is a different role and a different vote.
But we've.
Right, and we've now had the opportunity to have our discussion on this and feel, this is the motion we've got on the floor. So let's go ahead and, all those that support the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for, 1 against. Okay. Brad. Karen, I'm sorry, Ms. Seals, Commissioner Seals.
And my goodness, the only thing, we have important work ahead of us, and it has to be done with all the parties engaged. And so I don't know whether, I don't really want to pull another transportation task force together, but I would like to bring the presentation of the recommendations, because it also included the split between roads, transit, trails, et cetera, as a informative piece, not as a dictatorial piece, but an informative piece, so you can see where the task force landed at their last discussion. I also would suggest that we use either the collaborative lab or a process by which we bring together possibly the MPO, the PSTA, and even the TBARTA boards to have a discussion on the project list. Maybe we present the Transportation Task Force, and then what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create collaboration amongst the agencies rather than us taking our hat and only being PSTA or only being NPO or only being TBARTA. And so that project list is going to be so hard to come by and so probably hotly debated that and I'm not saying when it should be, but at some point I think we need to come together. And then it doesn't become necessarily like the ACPT, becoming the end-all, and it's all of us working together. That's what I'm after, is so that we have a very robust collaborative process that engages people, engages them.
And did you gurus get that written down so we know in further discussions we can have those and pull those people together?
When we did the task force, and Commissioner Welch will remember this, or Commissioner Banner, we had elected officials that crossed across the county, plus we had business leadership, and we then also had 2 collaborative lab sessions, one in which we asked citizens from all the different parts of the county to come in and weigh in what they thought was important for their area. And then we had the task force work also collaboratively of that mix of projects. And so I think it was a good product. And that's what I'm trying to go after, is some manner in which we don't, and yay, go for, bus transportation is wonderful, and for light rail, but we gotta have the balance amongst the different agencies, and that's what I'm trying to get to. Instead of us creating it in our own vacuums, and maybe it's just a representative, the chair of TBARTA, not the whole board.
Commissioner Latvala?
I have a very either naive or stupid question.
Nothing stupid.
Is this plan going to be so detailed that it will say new bus route from point A to point B, making stops at blah, 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 blah?
I don't know that we've.
I don't know whether we know that answer
We
yet.
haven't.
Okay.
But it would be probably a project list for roads. And I would hope that it would be a project list showing where the light rail would go, so that people, that was the biggest price and location was what hurt Hillsborough. They didn't have a decisive plan.
But
So we're going to have to.
Let me finish my thought.
Yeah, sorry.
I've said this several times in front of many of you. Putting this initial piece, in my opinion, should be about making the transit system, and whatever it goes, whatever it takes to make that countywide and available to all citizens, making that PSTA system robust and accessible to everyone to get their needs met, to go from wherever it is they need to go, from one point to another. What it sounds to me like you're saying is very specific things. And if we don't do this piece, and I don't want to say a piece because then it makes it sound like that has to be a part of it. But building up the PSTA system, I think we have to talk about that first. It's virtually non-existent in North County. We've recently added a couple of components that are making a huge impact. And I think anybody that's on PSTA knows that there's great opportunity there for expansion of the system. Those people already pay a tax. And the only way to get them to vote to continue paying a tax, albeit a different tax, is to show them what kind of service they're going to be getting for that. To talk about building this road in South County, and vice versa, to talk about building a specific road in North County to the South County population, I think that's too defined. I thought this was going to be a little more up higher level. And then PSTA would decide over a long period of time that first we're going to expand or begin rapid transit routes here and here. Then we need to do something in this particular corridor. Am I talking too generically?
Brad, could you talk briefly about, and that was one of the things that I was hoping I would see out of here, was we know that we have to build this plan, and I was hoping to see from my gurus, we got to do this, 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 and this. And underlining those things, maybe different entities such as PSTA, MPO, BARDA, they're going to fine tune it a little bit more that maybe we don't and they do. And I think we have to say, we know there's going to be a plan, but what all is going to be in that plan? And maybe it's just top level that eventually we get to the detail, and I think that's the question we're all trying to, when are you going to show us? Because all we know is that we've got to do a plan, the referendum language, and then whatever the third thing, implement various methods are going to come to us. When are we going to be able to see the plan element? Because I think that's where you're coming from, and that's what we just said we were going to support.
The executives met, as we do before each one of these meetings, and started to develop that list of 75 different things that need to be included in the plan, and kind of came to the conclusion, I want to speak on behalf, that perhaps some of these elements, and I think after the fairly extensive, so I don't want to get into their time, description of the bus planning, that we didn't want to present you with that defined list until we just had this discussion we just had about what is the role of this committee. We will come back next month with a list of suggested topics, but it will be higher level, or at least the idea, you can certainly tell us what to do, but it'll be higher level than each individual route. I mean, that will be in the appendix, but for all to see the level of detail, but I wasn't planning on.
So that.
But if you want, and after you see their presentation, TMB has looked at every single route in the system. After you see that, and if you want more, there is more.
The impression that I got, one second, the impression that I got in having a conversation just about the agenda with Sarah, that over the next 6 months, and there's something in here regarding a schedule, is the bus study. And I think we need to be fed somewhere. The whole plan is going to consist of all of this stuff, and I think we're at a point that we need to know what all of this stuff might be that's going to be flowing our way. And I think it would help many of us understand, even though you all know the plan needs to have all these things, I think we need to have that. And maybe we concentrate over the next 6 months what's happening with the bus plan and how that fits into all of this. But I think we need to have some kind of an overview, and maybe not right now, but next month, obviously. what
Chair,
that
I
plan
agree.
is.
Just further to what Brad said, I guess we knew that that was your request, and we felt this discussion that just occurred
Mhm.
needed to occur first,
Mhm.
in terms
Okay.
of your accepting the role, refining the role, and so, and then we had some discussion about what role, if any, the previous task force recommendations would play in this process. So I
Mhm.
think getting that out there, at least knowing what their recommendations were, so give you some
Sure.
context
Mhm.
for developing the projects over the course of the next several months. So, again, I think we needed to have had the discussion that we had today before we can do any of that. So you'll see that coming forward over the next few months.
Commissioner Kukowski, did you have something you wanted to say?
Starting the approach of Commissioner Zavala, I don't want to be naive, but
I was, it's okay.
I am very naive in this situation here, because coming out of PSTA, what I'm hearing here today is something that I don't want to say I was oblivious to it, because I wasn't, but it seems like I keep hearing percentage of money and what it's going to, okay?
I think
At the PSTA level,
It has to come.
It has to come. when
and this
we-
is the
we've
important
all been
conversation.
there.
I think there are assumptions from each one of us. As you say, we're all in our own little vacuum, okay? But at the PSTA board level, there's not a percentage of money going anywhere, and except to
PSTA.
PSTA and transportation. Now, I'm not saying that it shouldn't. Please, please, please don't think, I think that's what we should be talking about. All of these things and figuring out what's what. Except what I'm hearing is that we need to know what the percentages are, but we haven't even had that conversation. And I think that's the first conversation we need to be having. Because our plan, I can tell you that our plan will probably eat up every cent of that money. So when you come back to talking about what are we going to get rid of in our plan, it's going to be hotly contested, and that's going to have to be, which now, okay, as we're having this conversation, now I understand why you wanted to reverse the PSTA to the ACPT. It took me a little minute of this last hour and a half window, but I now understand why that role got reversed. Because I couldn't understand it before, because really what we were trying to do is expand the county's transportation. And, you know,
No.
Okay,
so,
let me just,
I'm sorry, we have to have that conversation very quickly.
okay, let me just, for those of you that did not sit on the Alternative Analysis Committee, while that committee was, that was the first step, because we know we're going to go for federal monies, we had to put that plan together. While that was being put together, Commissioner Seals, and we knew the funding and all of that was going, because we had that same question as we're putting the plan together. Commissioner Seals had a task force made up of not only elected officials, but a lot of the business people, and they had that discussion. So when she's talking about, and it comes up here, related to percentages and all that, that's a discussion that has been had, whether it sticks by that or not, but we needed to have that discussion so that the Alternative Analysis Committee would know that people are looking at that, knowing that sooner or later this plan had to have that piece of the pie in it. And I think what Commissioner Seals has suggested, that we bring that back so this committee, made up of new members, can see what it was that they suggested and what their conversation was. That's a whole group of people. So now that we're ready to put the plan together, that piece of the pie is important for us as a draft to begin somewhere, okay? And that's how that all came about. And it is going to eventually be part of the plan at some point. Now, whether we say, we don't even know yet the 75 pieces of this plan, and I'm sure there's a funding somewhere in those 75 pieces that will be brought in. So I think not that we looked at it or anything, but her group did have those discussions and it was an initial.
And I understand that.
So
but I'm saying
eventually
we have to
we will-
discuss that.
Yes,
But
and
not
it will.
eventually, I mean, I think there's no
They're
reason
gonna
for
come
us to
with,
make
they're gonna come, staff is going to come with a list of what this plan is going to include, and in that plan will be funding. And, am I correct? Okay, and that's when all of that will be brought together. And yes, those of you that are sitting at PSTA and weren't part of the AA, you probably said, oh my God, this is something I didn't know, because there was a lot of pieces going on while we were putting the AA together. And those pieces will be brought back to us for some final and hard discussions. Commissioner Welsh, let's try and wrap this piece up, because I know the bus, we need to get them on the table. Commissioner Welsh.
Okay.
And I appreciate everybody's input, I really do.
Well, I agree with Julie to an extent, but let me just go back to Commissioner Laval for a minute. My view is the penny for Pinellas, the way that everyone could see a project in their community that was going to make a difference. So, although you don't have all the details, I think we need to have details for each part of the county when we eventually get there. But I agree with Julie, we need to have the conversation about what portion, if any, will go to things other than PSTA and the AA. Because the AA was 55% rail, 45% PSTA. And that entire 45% was going to fund extended, expanded bus service.
That was necessary.
Right, so it's not, really not taken away from that 45% in my view. You've got 55% for rail. You know, the discussion we need to have is out of that 100%, do we want to cull out something for things other than the bus system and
Right.
the AA? Right. So that's the discussion we need to have, and those projects are things you could fund out of the other piece of that. So I don't think it was an attempt to, you know, circumvent PSTA. It's a discussion.
No.
PSTA was only looking at its 45%.
Okay.
The AA was looking at its 55% all the way. Now it's time to look at the whole.
Okay. Commissioner Gannon?
Well, Commissioner Barthol's question, I think what you do is the detailed list, and here's the road projects, and here's what the full expanded bus network is, and here's the BRT, and here's the alternative analysis, and then you quickly find out you don't have that much money, and then have to sit down and say, what's the priorities, what's the phasing, are there other funding sources if we change the gas tax indexing, or if we, you know, it will change, but you put everything in there and then look at the shortfall and then start having that much more, and maybe then what's adopted is less detailed but gets into those percentages of, you know, we need to do this for roads, the BRT is a priority, so we need to fully fund it, or the bus network being expanded, you know, we need to do that to 85%, you know, and have that discussion somehow with all these boards as to how you best move a transportation network forward with 80% of the necessary funding, or 85%, whatever that number is. So you start off detailed and then kind of go back to more general, and hoping that there's things that change in the future, that sales tax collection might increase more than we're assuming, or gas tax parameters change, or things like that could, then you still have the plan, you just have to prioritize it and phase it, because we're clearly not going to be able to build everything from one funding source from day one.
No, but it's also imperative that we build the right things at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put this piece in place before you ever begin to think about rail. And if we don't have a robust bus system to take people from the points of beginning and end, what a waste of money. And it would never be supported. And we've got to put it in that context so that the public gets it. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I will probably never ride that train because I won't live that long.
Have faith.
Well, it's not about faith. I'm 63. It takes a long time to do these things. And maybe I will live to be 100. But, and be healthy and out there.
Be able to get on the train.
And be able, yeah, be able to get on that.
Physically.
But the point, you know, you have
It's
to
the
do
basis.
this. We don't have a robust transit system.
That's why we're
That
putting
is
this
priority
plan.
number one.
We're gonna put the plan together to help
Our road
everybody.
system is what it is. We don't have a lot of places where we can add more lanes or build even new roads. You know, you have to look at all of those pieces. But the transit system is why and how this got started. And being able to move people on a public transportation system. And we're gonna get all caught up in all kinds of fun discussions.
We are.
If we don't get things prioritized.
Okay.
And in the right order to be successful.
So the gurus have heard from all of us. Can we,
All clear to you now?
is everybody okay?
It's clear, and I want to make just one final comment so that you can get to the bus study. In terms of timing, for getting all of this on the table, it's perfect timing. We're in the middle of the MPO's long-range plan update, and we are required to produce a cost-feasible plan. So part of the other information that will be on the table during this time period is we will receive from DOT the forecast of our federal and state revenue. So we'll know what we have in terms of federal and state revenue for roads. In terms of transit, those are things we have to make some assumptions about since they require grant applications. But we'll also be working with the local governments with regard to other funding that they might have available in terms of the existing penny and gas tax and impact fees for local projects. So because this is happening concurrent with the MPO's plan update, you'll have all of that information on the table over the course of the next several months.
Okay. All right, we can go on to item number 2.
Moving right along.
Okay, well, guess what? That's good. Item number 2 is the community bus plan, and we do want to hear a little more about that.
I wish you would
Again, many of you have met her. I'd like to introduce Marie Lewis. Marie works for the bus consulting firm that PSTA has hired, Transportation Management and Design, out of San Diego. TMD is done many of these planning exercises in virtually every major metropolitan area in the United States and maybe even some in Canada. And so I think what you'll see is a lot of detail, but a process. Overall, the bus study is about halfway done, so this is a good time for her to give an update.
Right. So what we'll talk about today is, I know I've talked to a lot of you so far, board, committee, stakeholder meetings, going through a lot of the same information here. But what we really want to discuss today is the bus plan goals. So I'm going to give you some background on why we're kind of coming up with the goals we did, ask you to review the goals. As we go through, there is going to be some detail. Since we're running a little bit short of time, if you guys wouldn't mind holding some of your questions maybe till the end, so just to make sure we get to the goals. All right, so we have here essentially a 4-step process in the bus plan, and we are approximately halfway through, moving towards kind of the later stages of the plan. We compiled existing plans, we collected a lot of data. This is moving ahead without my... we worked with the PSTA board on the series of market strategies and goals for the plan. Now we're starting to move into the phase where we develop the recommendations themselves, and we do have a robust stakeholder and public involvement process that's going out to a lot of different groups, general public, riders, etc., which can help inform this plan. In terms of the ACPT, this is the preliminary schedule that we've worked out along with folks from PSTA. This keeps moving ahead. The bus plan goals is where we are today. Next meeting in March, just discussing public engagement. In April, we hope to bring back to you some draft recommendations on the bus plan itself, and then updates, and then a final approval in the early summer. So that's our current month-by-month schedule for the ACPT. I'm going to take you quickly through some of the findings, the early findings we have. We're looking at the markets, we're looking at the population and employment densities, we're looking at areas of strong kind of concentrations of both population and employment. We're looking at current and future. Here we have the areas that are going to grow over the next 20 or so years. And we find that a lot of the already dense areas are going to get denser. We're looking at travel patterns. We're looking at trips that are close to home, trips that are sort of a little bit longer in distance, trips across the bay. We're looking at commute trips versus shopping, recreation, other trips, looking at those patterns, helping them to, having those help us to inform our recommendations. We did a complete rider survey. We rode, some folks from our team rode every PSTA bus route, collected over 10,000 surveys, and we have some findings from that. I'm sorry, this keeps jumping ahead. I'm not sure why. I'm not pressing the button.
There is a timer. I just want you to know. I think the slides were originally sent with a timer, so I apologize for the interruption.
Oh, I see.
Just go back. I
apologize. Okay, no problem. So some of the findings we've gathered from the survey, it's kind of the typical PSTA rider today is employed, at least part-time, has a fairly low annual income, does not own a vehicle, does not have a driver's license. So they're typically folks who do not have access to a car, but are employed. And 28% stated that they would not be able to make their trip if PSTA were not available. So the single largest group of respondents said that they are dependent on PSTA bus service. However, over 70% do have some other option, albeit not necessarily a great or a more reliable option. The top 4 improvements that PSTA riders said that they'd like to make to the system: they'd like service to be more frequent, to come more often. They'd like to see more weekend service and later service in the evening, so kind of the span services available. They're looking for options. And improvements to the bus stops themselves. Improvements such as transfers, more express service, or a new route were kind of low on the spectrum. So we worked with PSTA to collect a lot of their current ridership data. Here we have mapped the locations and volumes of boardings throughout the PSTA system. This is an average weekday. And the size of the dots represents the amount of activity that takes place at each of these stops. So we can see kind of a nodal system here focused around some major hubs. Grand Central Station, downtown St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Park Street Terminal, shops at Park Place. These are all large hubs throughout the PSTA system that people are going to and also using for transfer activity. We also see some strong corridors: US 19, Gulf to Bay Boulevard, Central Avenue. All these have kind of consistent activity along their lengths. Frequency is something we're taking quite a bit of a look at here. It was referenced by a lot of consumers as things that they'd like to see improved. Most PSTA routes operate at 30-minute frequencies or greater, meaning that folks have a long wait if they just walk out to the stop. Most need to plan their trip around a printed schedule. So there's only 2 routes, the dark blue routes we see here on the map, that operate at 15-minute headways during peak periods. So this is kind of a big opportunity for us to make service more convenient throughout the PSTA system by making it more frequent.
And that wasn't on our slide, that was in our package. So Central Avenue going out to is also a 15-minute headway, because that wasn't on.
Yes, you know what, it probably was, because this is an animated slide. It shows peak and midday as well on the same slide. So during peak periods, Central Avenue trolley does operate at 15 minutes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
So frequency, through our experience in other projects of this nature, frequency is really important in attracting a larger customer base. there's a large market of people who are able, who want to be able to travel on demand. Folks who have other options, who have cars, who can bike or walk easily. You know, they want something that they can plan around their schedule, not where they have to plan themselves around PSTA's schedule. So there's a potential to increase the market share for PSTA by making service more frequent. This isn't to say that it's going to work everywhere. Frequency does require resources, but put in the right areas, frequency can have a major benefit, both for the route itself and for a network, for people to transfer easier as well. We did a lot of work on PSTA ridership at a route and stop level. Approximately 5 routes contribute half of the total system ridership: 19, 18, 52, 4, and 59, some of PSTA's core trunk routes. Combined with the trolleys, these 5 routes and the trolleys generate 60% of system ridership. Boardings per revenue hour services how productive service is. We have 2 top routes, which are in North County, Route 60 and 78, very productive. We also have some that are kind of at the lower end of the spectrum, under 15 passengers per hour, not carrying a lot of people for the resources that are invested.
Could you tell me what the routes are? The top one, go back to the previous slide. Which route is 19, 18, 52, 40, 40?
You mean what corridors do they serve?
Yeah.
19 serves US 19.
Okay.
18 serves Seminole Boulevard, down past Tyrone Square Mall through basically the Central Avenue area. Basically connects Clearwater and St. Pete. Route 52 also connects Clearwater and St. Pete through East Bay Drive and 49. Thank you. Route 4 serves 4th Street. And Route 59 serves Ulmerton Road down to St. Pete as well.
Okay, and then the trolleys, because I can't figure it out, given CAT, SB.
Oh, sorry. CAT is Central Avenue trolley.
Okay.
So that's the one that goes down to the beach, runs at 15 minutes. Suncoast Beach trolley, that's SBT. That one kind of travels the length of the beaches.
Right.
The other 3 trolleys are the downtown looper, the Jolly Trolley Clearwater Beach, and the Jolly Trolley Tarpon Springs services.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But just to highlight again, something I think surprised the PSTA board and every single person I mentioned to the next slide. 60, the most productive route in the whole system is Gulf to Bay in Clearwater. And the 78 is Clearwater to Countryside Mall through Dunedin.
Right. Absolutely. So it's very productive services. Central Avenue trolley is the most productive as well of the trolleys. Fare box recovery, looking at how much of the total cost of a route is recouped through the fare box. Again, Route 60 and 78 have the greatest fare box recovery. Route 60 recoups 50% of its costs through the fare box, which is very strong. Okay. This is a map of the productivity of different route segments shown geographically. So rather than at a route level, this is broken out into a little more of a geographic spacing. Oh, keeps happening. So the most productive services are in green and dark green. This is where service is really working, carrying a lot of folks. And the areas in pink and red is where the service may not be hitting its mark. It's serving, areas where it's not picking up a lot of riders for the amount of service that's out there. And this can have to do with the market area, how the service is designed, a lot of different factors involved here. So we kind of took a look at, what are some of the key findings we can pull out of why certain route segments do well, others don't do so well. The strong routes kind of serve key origins and destinations directly. Not a lot of deviations. They get people from where they are to where they need to go as directly as possible. They operate along corridors with mixed-use development, not necessarily single-family residential. They've got perhaps retail, commercial on the corridor, residential behind, a lot of different trip purposes to generate rides. And they use their resources efficiently. They're well designed. That has a strong contribution. Route 60 is very efficient, for example. Some of the weaker routes in the system, some of those pink and red areas, tend to serve lower density residential areas, more single family home type development, not a lot of different origins and destinations. And sometimes they're indirect. They may deviate from a corridor, take people out of their way. It adds time to the route and it's less attractive for customers. So all this kind of gets us to this analysis. We shared this with the PSTA board last month. Is what we're trying to do is start to put together the basis of a core PSTA network. One of the things that you all were talking about a few minutes ago of, how do you create a strong network which can support higher intensity, higher frequency services. So we have some ideas on how you could begin to lay it out, and this is by no means a complete map. We're actually working with PSTA this week to kind of try to refine this a little bit more. But this has some of the strongest corridors in the PSTA system, areas which kind of dovetail with our market and travel pattern analysis, that if this kind of network could run at good frequencies, it could really transform the PSTA network into something that people could really use for a majority of trip purposes. And if anybody has, comments going on what we, didn't include, things like that, we'd be happy to hear your comments. So that's kind of our one strategy that we're taking forward here, is to create a core network of routes that perform very strongly. Right now, this core network, currently 70% of PSTA boardings take place on this core network. So basically about 3 out of 4 customers touch one of those core routes every day. So if we improve the core network, all the services have a potential to benefit from it. And core network is more productive, serves more passengers, has the potential to generate more ridership and more fare revenue, leading to a more financially sustainable PSTA system. So we've been working with the PSTA staff and board and a few of these important trade-offs that we'll be considering throughout the plan, and it's really nothing new. Frequency versus coverage. Do we put more resources in a corridor to make it operate frequently, less in other areas? Or do we spread service more evenly throughout the service area, regardless of kind of how much people are using it? Do we speed service up so that it moves quickly and perhaps doesn't have as many stops? Or do we put more stops in so people have more access to service? And how do we prioritize different transit options, local bus, commuter services, BRT, demand responsive flex routes, et cetera, trolley services, for example. So these are all sorts of trade-offs that we're going to be bringing in here. All right, so that kind of gives us a background on how we got to the bus plan goals. So we started discussing these last month, and so we're looking for your input and feedback here to take back to the PSTA board for approval. Is that correct? So right now we have 3 goal categories. The first one is build transit constituency. This kind of has to do with the kind of people we're attracting to transit. This is our market-based, our people-based goal category. The second, improve transit competitiveness. This is our service design-based goal category. And finally, build financial sustainability. That's our finance in our sustainable finance category. So within each of these goal categories, we have 3 main goals of what we want to accomplish. And these were developed over a few discussions with the PSTA board. The first is to broaden the market penetration. So broaden the kinds of groups, the kinds of people we can attract and sustain on PSTA services. So things include here attracting more choice riders, increasing the use of bus transit for more trip purposes. So not just commute, not just school, for example, but sort of all day, all week types of purposes. And respond to both residents and visitors. So second, support community mobility. Serve any unmet needs, respond to various planning initiatives throughout the community, development initiatives, incorporate in with other sustainable modes like pedestrian plans to create a holistic plan for the community. And finally, match service to market. So create the right transit product for the right market. Sometimes you might want a higher intensity service, sometimes you want more of a community-based service, but match that service to the correct market. All right, so what I'm going to do here, if it's all right with everybody, is I'm going to go through the rest of the goal categories so we have kind of a holistic sense of what we're talking about here, and then we can discuss these and make sure that they're in line with where the ACPT wants to go. So the second, we have improved transit competitiveness, and again, this is our service-based goal category. We had quite a bit of discussion last time about whether competitiveness was the right word in this context. And what we mean by competitiveness is is transit a competitive option compared with other modes, particularly the automobile? So how attractive is it? How convenient is it? Can transit be a viable option as an alternative to the automobile? So some of the subcategories here, some of the goals are enable spontaneous use of the system, so people can kind of walk out to the corridor and take it on demand rather than planning their schedule. That's kind of number one. Invest in higher frequency service all day, all week. Make service faster and more direct. We hear a lot about that. Streamline routes and reduce delay wherever possible so people can get more quickly where they need to go. And the third is focus that service investment. Rather than a kind of total peanut butter approach where we're spreading service evenly, invest in key corridors so we can create good service on good corridors, and then we can serve those corridors. Focus service on regional activity centers and improve the customer experience where it counts. All right. Finally, we have our build financial sustainability goal category. We want to, first we want to use our resources effectively, and we're working directly with PSTA to work on a plan that is efficient, doesn't waste resources. It's the most effective way to go. Establish performance and productivity standards. We want to grow ridership, increase the amount of people we have on our system, as well as get those people to ride more frequently. And that includes increasing the fare box revenue as well, because that builds financial sustainability. And third, use this plan to build consensus. We've been out in the community quite a bit. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. Use this plan to build consensus for that increased investment through the referendum that we've been talking about, and for development of more transit-friendly development, more transit-friendly communities. All right, I know that was a lot to take in quickly. And this is, I'll go back to the beginning though, these are the categories that we are looking for input into to go back to PSTA and to approve these as the goals of the bus plan.
Do I have anybody want to add a question on any of this? If not, I would like a motion to endorse the bus plan goals so that they can take them back.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Even the second time it was better.
Yeah. I think, sure.
When you come back with the final bus plan, when do you start attaching price tag for them? Will you have that when you come back in June, or is it after that?
Yes, we will. It's going to be, as we develop the plan, we'll be costing it out as we go. Some of the elements we intend to be kind of scalable over time. Whether we have all of the capital costs, associated with these developments, that'll keep going over time. But by the time plan approval, absolutely, we will have everything costed out.
So by June 2013,
right,
you'll have operational capital
yes
plans. route by route.
Route by route. So we have a lot of, I know we have questions on the details of the plan. What we've been tasked with is to create a plan that, is high level and detailed. So whatever we need to take forward, it's best to present it at a high level, that's fine. We also have the detail to back it up.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought you had something.
Well, and just to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just to add, you're looking at a scenario with no increased revenues and then a scenario with a half-cent of new revenue.
That was the original procedure, but, if those adjust, we definitely have, a no revenue scenario, absolutely. And then we also have, we're tasked with, 2 additional revenue scenarios.
And they are.
At first, they have been a half and a full cent, and how that adjusts going forward, then we'll work with the PSTA on that.
Cassandra?
We're waiting to see what happens at the county level and the discussion that takes place there before we finalize what those 2 revenue scenarios are going to be. I think there's a lot of variables that can play into that I think need to be discussed and quickly before we give Marie and her team some idea of what she's going to be planning out. Now, all that being said, the work that they are doing is very detailed, and once they finish their work, we'll be able to take another look at those scenarios. But her work is going to be high level in order to get us to June, in order to get us the right information, in order to have a more robust conversation that you all were having earlier. But right now, she's tasked with 2 new revenue scenarios. So we'll see how those turn out.
So that's some of the input we'll need fairly quickly moving forward is, what kind of scenarios we're looking at, how much money do we really have to develop these.
Oh, he totally said what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Since she gave up her time. And we've talked about this a long time, so if I'm just missing it, maybe we can get together afterwards. Why would we look at a full cent? The AA has always been predicated on 55% for rail, 45% for bus. Half cent for bus. Why would we look at a full cent just for bus? We've never, did I hear that right?
No,
Okay.
we would decide how that rail would fit into the funding scenario and then what was available for the bus. Or
With the 1 cent?
With the
full
1
okay.
cent. So no, we would not be looking at a 1 cent scenario for all bus, but what portion of that new revenue source would go to bus.
And the
or
half cent
rail.
scenario is that the ask was only for a half cent just for bus.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything we want to add? I see none. We have a motion on the floor to endorse the goals. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Here. I think we're on to number 3. Quickly, some updates now.
For me? If it's in the I'm not sure.
Oh, I think there's the rest of the presentation actually after
It's
that.
behind it. Yeah, it's just, I think the last 2 were. Yes. No, why is it go back to the beginning? Oh, I don't know. I could just do it from what they already had in their packets.
I don't know, yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why it's doing that. Going back to the end.
And I'm not sure why the presentation, but I can just very briefly, you have 2 slides in your packet that provide an update on where we are with the stakeholder coordination for the long-range plan update. So if you're looking at your slides in your packet, There's one slide that shows the 5 steering committees that have been set up aligned with the jurisdictions along the alternatives analysis line. They're identified as steering committees A through E, so if you have that slide. And so we have had meetings with all of the steering committees at this point. We've also had one overall group meeting bringing everyone together to talk about the activities as we go forward. And let's see if I here we are. So again, steering committees, we have 5 of them. They are basically grouped by jurisdiction. There is some overlap with several of the stations, but also I just wanted to show you we're doing station design charrettes for several of the stations, not for all of them. So we'll be doing design charrettes for, I think it's 8 of the stations, and then we'll be taking concepts from those design charrettes to actually do some type of design for the ones that we're not bringing in the design engineers for. So we'll have concepts for all, but we budgeted for a certain number of charrettes, as you see here. The other activity that's currently underway is our outreach to the landowners and business stakeholder groups. And as we work with our steering committees with the local jurisdictions, we've asked them how to best engage the landowners in their communities. Some have identified the desire to have just large group meetings. Others are a combination of group meetings and one-on-one meetings, or in fact you'll see in almost every case one large group meetings and then a series of one-on-one meetings, some more, some less in terms of the different communities. We have begun some of those meetings. We had a very good and productive meeting with Morton Plant Hospital officials 2 or 3 weeks ago. Myself, PSTA staff, along with Jacobs, very receptive to the discussion about the alternatives analysis. They were very excited about the prospect of enhanced transit service for their workers, for the visitors to the hospital, for their patients, just for the full range of activities that they have. So that's the only meeting that we have actually had to sit down with officials at this point, but a number of others have been set up. So again, we're in the process of working with the local agencies to look at station area designs and also working with the business and business community and landowners with regard to their input to the project. Again, we looked at a series of one-on-one meetings, large group meetings, as we work with the local jurisdictions, and we defer to them in terms of how we would carry out those meetings in their individual communities. We kicked that effort off early January, so we're about a month into that right now, and over the course of the next several months we have a number of meetings that have been planned dealing with, again, the station area designs as well as individual meetings with stakeholders to gain their input on the project. And that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. These are some upcoming presentations that we're going to be getting in the future. And our next meeting is in March. And what was the date, Cassandra? Because Brad and Cassandra will not be here. Was it March 11th? March, is that it, March 11th? Is it, you two are not going to be here? And we're wondering, could we do it the Monday before on March 4th? Same time? That's 1 o'clock okay with everybody?
Somehow it's already in my calendar for that.
All right.
You're ahead of your time.
Okay, good. So we will make it for March 4th at 1 o'clock.
Well, I'm looking at February 4th, that's why.
Oh,
Sorry.
there you go.
I knew that was too good to be true.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine for that.
Okay, good.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just one thing, we would also add what Commissioner Seal had discussed
Mhm.
earlier on the upcoming,
Yes.
the
Yes.
previous
Correct.
task force
Correct.
recommendation.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of
Yes.
things. The task force at some point will have some discussion of how the penny can be used. So yeah, we can hold those.
Anything else from the committee?
Just in case it comes up. on the-
What?
Every second Monday from March March through December.
Okay, we just said.
But they have a
We just
conflict
changed,
on the
so there's a
11th.
conflict, that's why we're taking it to the 4th. Yes.
But
Only
typically it
'cause
would
there's
be
a
the second
conflict.
Wednesday, you're
Yeah.
right.
To the fourth, that one.
Yeah, so it's at the 4th of 1.
What's the process for us getting our agendas and our backup material and for this?
I think we get it a week in advance.
They're sent out by PSTA staff,
Oh,
they did
okay, so-
not provide your information.
No, and I've been, cheating and looking on the side. but-
Okay, no, a week
That's
in
our fault, we need to
advance.
get your contact information to Rachel.
And we get how far in advance of the meetings generally?
A week.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Welsh?
This is not a quick question, so it's probably a discussion for the next meeting, but since the commission is going to meet on the 12th, I can see the question coming up
The 12th of this month?
in February.
February, okay.
In scheduling this for the transit referendum for 2014 November, we've already said that ACPT will coordinate the language. My assumption is we are asking, or will ask for a full penny. Because the question will come up, what amount are you asking to put on the referendum, a half cent or full cent? My assumption has been a full cent, so unless y'all tell me different, that's gonna be what we talk about at the commission. We can change it down the line, but I just wanna make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anything else we're going to deal with? Being none, we adjourn and we'll see everybody next month. Sarah, good job.
Gotta show you some.
Thank you, everybody.